I've been on both sides of the table in business exits worth a combined $192 million. I've built companies from nothing and sold them. I've acquired businesses and seen exactly what makes an owner leave money on the table. Every lesson in this video came from a real deal, a real negotiation, or a real mistake that cost someone real money. This is the advice I would give myself if I could go back to before my first exit and download everything I know into a single conversation. I'm going to give it to you in the order of what matters most. Not the order I learned it in, the order that moves the actual number you walk away with. The stuff at the top is worth more than everything else combined, and almost all of it is in your control years before a buyer ever shows up. Years ago, I owned a company called Auto Finance of America that owned CarLender.com. We were one of the early online auto finance companies right in the middle of the late 1990s dot-com boom. On paper, it was the kind of business that should have sold for a premium, but it sold for a fraction of what I thought it was worth. So let me walk you through what happened. We were undercapitalized and we were running out of money. When it came time to sell, I didn't have time to do the right thing by running a process of attracting multiple potential buyers. I went to market with only one identified buyer because I had no runway to go find others. And because we were undercapitalized, that buyer learned during due diligence that we did not have a choice. They could see we had to sell. They never said it out loud. Nobody comes in and announces, "You're desperate, so I'm gonna take advantage of you." They just made a very aggressive offer, knowing I was out of time and had nowhere else to turn. And so I took it because the alternative was worse. The terms are under NDA, so I cannot give you the numbers, but I can tell you the magnitude. A business in that space, in that market, at that time, could have gone for somewhere in the range of 12 to 15 times EBITDA, or maybe even higher. Valuations were crazy back then. Well, we sold for low single digits. Not just a worse multiple, but a worse structure too. Multiple millions of dollars left on the table in one deal because of two decisions. One, I went to market with a single buyer. Two, I sold while I was undercapitalized from a position of weakness that anybody could see. Those are the two biggest mistakes you can make at an exit, and I made both at once. So let me give you the rules in the order they cost the most, starting with the one underneath that whole story. Sell when you do not have to sell. The single most important thing I can tell you about selling a business is this: sell when you do not have to. Leverage is the most important thing you can have when selling. And if you are not careful, you give it away for free. The moment a buyer feels that you need to sell, whether it's money, health, a partner falling out, burnout, divorce, the price comes down. Not because the buyer is cruel, because that is what leverage does. The person who can walk away holds the power, and desperation tells the buyer you cannot walk away. So the best time to sell is when you absolutely do not need to. When the business is healthy, your bank account is fine, and you could happily keep running it for another 10 years. That is exactly when you get the strongest offers, because the buyer can feel that you mean it when you say no. Auto Finance of America is the proof. I sold them from weakness, and the market priced my weakness in. Never let a buyer feel that you have to sell. If you take nothing else from this video, take that. Number two, the business has to be able to run at its current level without you in it. If it cannot, you are not selling a business, you are selling a job. And nobody pays a premium for a job. Let me show you exactly what this looks like, because I walked away from a deal over it. There was a roofing company in Central Florida, very profitable, the kind of numbers that really make you want to lean in. My partner in that deal and I looked hard at buying it. We would have paid 6 to 8 times earnings for that business, but the owner ran the entire sales operation himself. He trained every salesperson, he recruited them, he motivated them, they reported directly to him, and not one of them could perform without him standing behind them. The whole engine of that company was one burnt out guy, and I could not get comfortable that he would actually stay engaged after the close. So I walked. There was no number low enough because the risk was not about price. It was about whether the thing I was buying would still exist once he exited. I always tell people why I walk. I told him exactly what the problem was so he could go and fix it and come back to me. That is not me being nice. It's good business. A fixed company is one I might actually buy. If you are the company, fix that before you ever think about selling. Build a team, write down how it runs, and get yourself out of the daily engine. Otherwise, the buyer either walks like I did or pays you a fraction and ties the rest to you staying. Number three, never go to market with one buyer, ever. This is the other half of what killed me on the Auto Finance of America deal. One buyer sets the price. They have no reason to stretch because they know they are the only option. 3 buyers fight over the price, and you just sit back and let them. Competition is where your leverage comes from. You do not walk your way or talk your way into it at the negotiating table. You build it before the table by lining up more than one interested party. When I had one buyer and they could see I had no time to find another, well, I had no leverage at that point, and the offer I got reflected it. When you run a real process with several buyers who know other buyers are in the room, the whole dynamic flips. Same company, completely different outcome, decided entirely by how many people are bidding. So do not let a single buyer back you into a corner. Start early enough that you can bring more than one to the table. That alone can be worth more than a year of operational improvements. Number 4, sell when revenue and margins are moving in the right direction. Positive trends. Buyers do not just buy where you are, they buy where you are heading. A business with revenue climbing and margins improving is worth far more than the same business sitting flat or sliding, even if this year's numbers look identical. The trend is the story the buyer tells themselves about the future, and the future is what they are paying for. The instinct a lot of owners have is to wait until they have squeezed out the last possible quarter to sell at the very top. But the very top is also where the trend flattens. You want to sell into strength while the line is still pointing up, because that is when a buyer leans in and pays for the momentum. Number 5, sell way ahead of uncertain or turbulent times. Not when they've arrived and not when everyone can already see them coming. By the time the turbulence is here, every buyer can see it too, and it's priced into every offer you're going to get. The owners who do well are the ones who read the road 2 turns ahead and move while the water is still calm. Selling reactively after the storm is obvious is just a slower version of the same weakness that cost me on the Auto Finance of America deal. You are selling because you have to, and the buyer knows it. You cannot always predict what's coming. But when you get that feeling that the ground is about to shift in your industry, your market, the wider economy, that is a signal to move early, not to wait and hope it passes. Number 6, start preparing 2 years before you sell. Not when you feel ready, 2 years before. Everything that creates real value in a sale takes time to fix. Getting yourself out of the daily operation, cleaning up the financials, de-risking your customer base, getting key people and key clients on contracts, none of that happens in a month, and buyers can smell a rushed exit from across the room. A company that was scrambled together to sell looks exactly like what it is, and it gets priced that way. When you start 2 years out, you get to fix the things that move the multiple while there is still time for them to take hold. Almost every mistake I have talked about so far traces back to the same root, which is running out of time. Starting early is how you make sure you never do. Number 7, your revenue is not your value. I watch owners anchor on their top line number like it's the prize. 20 million in revenue, so the business must be worth some multiple of 20 million. That is not how a buyer thinks. A buyer is not paying for how busy you are. They are paying for the profit they get to keep after they own it, and how confidently they can predict that profit going forward. A high revenue business that barely makes money or makes money in a way nobody can forecast is worth far less than a smaller business throwing off clean, predictable profit. So stop selling me your revenue. Show me the earnings I actually get to keep, and show me why they will still be there next year. That is what I'm buying. Number 8, clean your books a full year before you go to market. 2 years is better, but at least 1 year. A lot of owners fall into the same trap. For years, you run personal expenses through the company to save on taxes. The car, the travel, the meals, all of it. It saves you a little at tax time, and it costs you a lot at the closing table, because now your earnings look smaller than they really are, and you have to convince a buyer to add all of it back. And from my side of the table, the buyer's side, that is one of the fastest ways to kill my confidence in a deal. When I see a pile of seller discretionary add backs with no documentation, no clean way to prove those expenses will not recur, 3 things happen at once. I lose confidence in the financials. I lose confidence in the seller's integrity because I start wondering what else is dressed up. And I dig in because now I am being asked to pay a real multiple on earnings that only exist if I take your word for it. It almost always shows up as a fight about price. The seller thinks the add backs are obvious and I'm lowballing him. I think half the add backs are not real. But the actual root of the fight is the messy, undocumented books, not the price. So keep the personal expenses minimal and document everything you do run a full year ahead so every add back is clean and provable. You will get that money back in the multiple. Think about it. If you run $10,000 in personal expenses that can't be added back and you sell at a multiple of 7x, you're leaving $70,000 in exit value on the table to save what, maybe $3,000 in taxes? The math doesn't add up. Number 9, now the contrarian one. The thing owners are proud of that actually scares buyers: customer concentration. An owner will tell me with a big smile that one client is 70% of their business. They see a trophy, a huge logo, a great relationship, proof the company is winning. I see a single point of failure because the day that client leaves, most of the company leaves with them. And if I just bought it, that is now my problem, not yours. Let me give you a real one. This happened less than 2 months ago. There was a fitness company I looked at. They manage fitness centers for other people. The gyms inside HOAs, apartment buildings, commercial buildings, they run them as a third-party manager. Good business, but 70% of their total revenue and earnings sat in just 2 clients. I wanted to make it work. The only way I could buy it was to protect myself against the thing that scared me. I offered a structure where a large seller note that would be forgiven if either of those 2 clients walked within 24 months. If the client stayed, the seller got paid in full. If they left, the note covered the hole. That is a fair way to share a risk that is real. The seller refused, so I walked. That is what concentration does. It either kills your deal outright or it forces a structure that moves a big chunk of your money into "we will see" tied to client staying. If any single client is more than 20% of your revenue, fix that before a buyer makes it your problem in the price. Go win more customers, spread the base, so no one logo can sink the company. Number 10, get your clients and your key people on real contracts before you sell. Handshake revenue potentially walks the day you sell. That client who has been loyal for 10 years because they love you personally, well, the new owner is not you, and there's nothing on paper to keep that relationship in place. Same with your best people. An at-will superstar, the one who really runs the place, can walk out the door the week the deal closes and take the value with them. Get them on an employment contract with incentives to stay. A buyer looks at your business and asks one question about every important relationship. Does this survive the sale, or does it leave with the founder? Anything held together by a handshake is a risk that will price against you. So get it in writing. Real client contracts, real employment or retention agreements for the people who really matter, well before you go to market. You're not just protecting the business, you are proving to the buyer that what they pay for stays. Number 11, recurring revenue or contracted revenue is worth multiples more than project revenue. Same dollars, completely different value. Think about 2 businesses that both did, say, $1 million in profit last year. One did it on one-off projects, every dollar earned by going out and winning the next job, and next year starts at 0. The other did it on contracts and subscriptions that renew. So next year starts the same way the prior year ended, with the register ringing. Those 2 businesses are not worth the same, not even close. One is predictable, the other is hope. A buyer pays for certainty. Recurring revenue is certainty you can see, so it carries a much higher multiple than the same amount of project work. So if any part of your business can be moved onto a recurring or contracted model, do it before you sell. You are not just changing how you get paid, you are changing what your whole company is worth. Number 12, document everything that lives in your head. Processes, relationships, pricing, logic, all of it. The test is simple. If it cannot be handed over, it cannot be sold. Every founder carries a huge amount of business in their head. That's normal. How you price a job, which vendor to call when something breaks, why this customer gets handled differently, the 100 judgment calls you make without thinking. To you, that is just running the company. To a buyer, it is risk because the day you leave, all of it leaves with you too. So write it down. Build the processes, map the key relationships, get the logic out of your head and onto paper where someone else can run it. This is the same idea as making the business run without you, just one level deeper. A business that lives in the founder's head is a job. A business that lives in documented systems or SOPs is an asset somebody can actually own. Number 13, the right advisors have to be in your corner before you need them, not when the deal is already on the table. A good M&A attorney and a CPA who has done real deals will pay for themselves in a single clause. The structure of a deal, the reps and warranties, the way the money is actually defined, that is where exits are won and lost. And a generalist who does not live in this world will miss the thing that costs you the most. By the time you're in a deal, it's too late to go shopping for the right team. You take who you have and you hope that they're good enough at that point. So build that bench early. Find the M&A attorney and the deal experienced accountant while there is no deadline and no pressure. So when it's time to sell, the people in your corner have done this 100 times. The right advisor catches that one clause that protects millions. The wrong one waves it right through. Number 14, understand the different terms and which ones matter to you. because terms matter as much as price, sometimes more. A buyer can hand you a big headline number that is mostly smoke. A $100 million offer where most of it is an earnout you only collect if the business hits targets over the next several years, or equity in their company that may or may not ever be worth anything, or seller financing where you are effectively lending them the money to buy you. That can easily be worth less than a lower all-cash offer that hits your account at close and is yours. Done. No strings. I am giving you this one from the buyer's chair because earnouts and rollovers take years to play out, and I'm not going to put a fake story on it. But the principle is simple. Do not get hypnotized by the headline. Look at what lands in your bank account when and how certain it is. Cash today is sometimes worth more than a bigger number you might collect later. Know which terms you can live with and which ones you cannot before you ever sit down to negotiate. And the last one, number 15, the one I added because everything else is worthless without it. Always be truthful about the business. Do not hide anything. Do not misrepresent anything, good or bad. I know the temptation. There's a problem in the business, a risk, something ugly, and you decide it's not a big deal. So you leave it out and hope it doesn't come up. That is the most expensive gamble you can make. And let me tell you why. A sophisticated buyer or their advisors will find it. And if they don't find it before the close, they find it after. And then they sue you and claw the money back. Because when you sell, you sign reps and warranties, a legal document where you swear you have disclosed everything, the good and the bad. That signature is the whole deal. Let me show you how that cuts both ways. I had a company called IVG. We sold it to a public company. There was a regulatory risk in that business, and I disclosed it. About a year after the close, the regulations hit exactly the risk I had flagged. And the buyer came back and tried to claim I had withheld it from them. I had not. It was in the reps and warranties, in writing, fully disclosed. And that document exonerated me. Being truthful on paper up front saved me tens of millions of dollars. If I had buried that risk to make the company look cleaner, I would have lost the claim and the money. Because I disclosed it, the same document the buyer tried to use against me is the thing that protected me. So tell the truth about your business, all of it. If there is something ugly, do not hide it. Tell your advisor and let them help you frame it the right way so it does not blow up the deal. The truth, disclosed and documented, is the cheapest insurance you will ever buy. Hiding it is how an exit you already closed comes back to take everything away. Everything I just shared comes back to one concept that most business owners never fully grasp: equity. If you understand equity, all of this clicks into place. If you do not, you are building blind. Click this video and I will break down what equity really means in a way that changes how you think about your business.